Hey everybody, I'm Benjamin, aka the Terrible Australian of Supermastery.com, and this is my video review of Get Hard, the new comedy starring Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart. So let's get right into it because I have a lot to say about this film. To start off with, the thing about comedy is comedy is probably one of the most subjective genres of film because what one person finds extremely funny, another person is not going to find funny at all. And I like comedies, I love comedies, I love a good laugh. And I'm a fan of Will Ferrell, and I like Kevin Hart as well. So I thought, you know, this film didn't seem like it was going to be a great comedy at all. So I thought, but I was interested in checking it out anyway. And for most part, it definitely kind of lived up to my expectations. Like, it is an average comedy. It's definitely not the best work of either Ferrell or Hart. It's definitely got some problems from screenwriting standpoint. One of the main ones being is like the film's premise is very thin, and it kind of feels like it's the type of premise that probably would have suited better for, say, like a short film or a sketch in a TV comedy show. So Ferrell and Hart and the filmmakers sort of try to stretch this premise as far as they possibly go. But at the same time, though, even though I did think the premise was thin, it doesn't overstay its welcome. The film is only about 100 minutes long, and that's probably the perfect length for a film like this. It didn't drag or sort of felt too long in any way. It was just the perfect right amount of time for sort of a very simple, straightforward premise like this. And I have to say, I thought, despite this not being the best of either of their works, but I did think Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart actually did a pretty solid job in this film. I wasn't sure about Will Ferrell's character at first because at first he's a very unsympathetic character, but at the same time he's very naive. Like, he's sort of kind of a bit racist. And kind of really up himself in a lot of ways. So you don't kind of feel sorry for him when he does sort of get accused of this crime that he says that he didn't commit, and he's going to be sent off to prison. But but what's good though is that Ferrell during the course of the film actually sort of makes his character at least more likable, and we can understand why he is and why he's scared of going to prison. And also Kevin Hart's sort of very likable in this film as well, and sort of mixing these sort of two comedic actors together, they sort of bounce off each other really well, and they have a great rapport with each other, and they do deliver quite a couple really funny moments in the film. I wouldn't say I was busting my gut laughing while I was watching this film, but it did make me giggle a couple of times, particularly in the second half of the film. So yeah, they both did a pretty solid job. But unfortunately, this film does have a lot of problems, and some quite sort of very troubling ones, I might add. I don't know if you all know about this, but the film's been getting a lot of controversy lately, and I noticed when I was watching the film the other day for the first time, like before I heard about everyone's reactions to it, I'm sort of watching this film, and at the same time I'm looking at certain scenes and jokes and all that being played, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, this film is definitely going to get a lot of people upset, and my prediction was right. There's a lot of this film really pushes its humor. Like, it's definitely a film that doesn't want to, I'm not the type of person who's PC. I'm not a politically correct person at all. But at the same time, though, a lot of the humor in the film and the jokes that don't work at all are just kind of really tasteless. And the main reasons for that is that the two kind of main subjects that this film sort of goes full out on with its humor is the first one being prison rape. Like with a film like this, that has a premise just like this one about a guy who's going to be sent off to jail. I mean, it's normal for a fact that one of the things that he'd be most terrified of is, being attacked and sexually assaulted in prison. So I don't mind if a film makes a joke about that maybe once or twice, but it has to do it in a way that it's both confronting, but at the same time it has to be sort of clever and actually witty as well, or it has some kind of satirical edge to it. Like a perfect example like this is something like South Park, which is a film that sort of is an equal opportunity offender, and its jokes offend people, but at the same time the makers of South Park sort of do that in a way that's both creative and inventive and satirical. Unfortunately, the filmmakers behind Get Hard didn't get that memo, and they sort of go for very cheap, very lazy, and very dated jokes about prison rape. Like I said before, I don't mind them if they do a joke like that maybe once or twice, but for the most part, that's where most of the sort of jokes sort of go into. And I can understand that because Ferrell's character, that's the thing that he's most terrified of, is that happening to him in prison. And I think the film could have done an interesting way of exploring that through his character. But unfortunately, it doesn't, and it just sort of relies on these sort of really tasteless jokes to do that. One or two is fine, but it just keeps going and going, and it just milks the whole prison rape thing for its worth. But unfortunately, a lot of the jokes just aren't that funny. And also another thing that I found a bit that doesn't work as well is that there's a scene in the film where both Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart's characters, they go to this sort of gay club. And the reason why they're there is that after sort of trying a couple of things, or trying to toughen up Will Ferrell's character so he can, be tough and strong in prison, Kevin Hart has this one idea that he has in mind, and I'm not going to spoil what it is, but when you sort of find out about it, it's definitely, I wasn't offended by it, but at the same time, it doesn't surprise me at all that a lot of people are upset and offended by this section of the film, because a lot of people have, it's definitely kind of bit, because it sort of has this sort of gay panic type of vibe as well that I did find very troubling. I don't think the filmmakers set out to make this scene homophobic. I don't think that was their intent at all. But at the same time, how it's sort of executed in the film, that's sort of it sort of comes across that way unintentionally. Like I said, I don't think it was intentional by the filmmakers, but I can understand why a lot of people are upset about it when they're going to see this scene. And maybe, so I said, I wasn't offended by the sort of the prison rape jokes or the sort of gay panic jokes, but at the same time, that doesn't excuse him for being really lazy, very cheap, and just dumb jokes that just aren't funny at all. And like I said, they could have been more interesting and more creative or sort of satirical in the way they could have presented those topics. That you can push the boundaries in an interesting way, but unfortunately the filmmakers, particularly the film's co-writer and director, Etan Cohen, it just doesn't work, and he just goes for lazy, obvious gags with those two topics. And which is a shame because he has written, in the past, he has written films that sort of have really interesting satirical edges to them. Like, he co-wrote Idiocracy and Tropic Thunder, and those were films that had a great satirical edge to them. They were really funny films, but they had this edge to them that made them really interesting and witty and creative. But unfortunately, none of that is in this film, and it's sort of just, I just personally found it kind of just dumb, to be honest, and just kind of almost borderline offensive, and just cheap. And I mean, what else can I really say about that? I pretty much summed it all up. It's just they could have just done something much more interesting, but unfortunately they didn't do that at all. That's not to say like the film doesn't have its merits. I think when the film doesn't do jokes about those subjects and deals with other things, that's when the film is actually is better, and it's actually its funniest. Like I said, there are funny moments in the film, and the film is like, the film gets better in its third act, where I think it actually was pretty well done, and it actually had some really sort of funny moments. The climax in particular, I thought was quite hysterical, and but that being said, there's also some other aspects of the film as well that I didn't think much of. Like, I feel like some of the supporting characters, particularly Craig T. Nelson and Alison Brie, who are sort of underused in their roles. Particularly Alison Brie. Like, I get her character's meant to be sort of this sort of narcissistic gold digger type, but I didn't. And while she does, Alison Brie looks really good in this film. She's quite sexy in the film, but I don't know. I kind of feel like she just wasn't given much to do. Craig T. Nelson definitely tries to add a little bit more to his character, but even then he's a bit underused as well. Although one supporting cast member I really liked and actually did a pretty solid job was actually rapper T.I., who plays Kevin Hart's cousin, who he kind of looks to him to find out about what prison life is like, since he's the only one who's actually gone to prison. And I actually thought he did a pretty solid job in the scenes he was in, and then he sort of added but also like there's sort of an interesting sort of racial element to the film that actually was kind of interesting and a bit satirical as well. But I feel like the film could have like just been done those aspects, like the other, if the film sort of approached sort of the prison rape stuff and the sort of the other sort of controversial stuff in at least a bit more interesting way, the film probably would have been better. But unfortunately, it's those things that sort of sully the film a bit. Like, it's not a bad film overall, and it's definitely not the worst thing ever that a lot of other film critics have made it out to be. But it's definitely not as good as it could have been, and it's definitely those really kind of really tasteless jokes are definitely work against it, and it just sort of makes it a bit more of a troubling experience. But overall, other than those aspects that I didn't really, other than the sort of controversial aspects, I'd say the film overall is average. Like, it did its job. It did give me a couple of good laughs, but I think but at the same time, it is just average. It is just an average film. And if you're still, despite, I think it's a film that people are either going to like or they're going to hate. They're going to hate it because of all the controversial things that it delves into, which I wouldn't blame anyone for not liking it at all for those reasons. But I would, and of course, some people they're just going to not take that. They're just going to, just see it as a fun little comedy. And that's fine as well, but it's definitely a very troubling film in some ways. So, overall, I'll give it about, if I had to rate this film, I give it a solid 2.5. like I said, it does have its funny moments, and I did like the two leads, but the other stuff, there's just a lot of things that do not work about the film. But luckily, some of the humor did save it from being a full-on catastrophe. So overall, that's my review of Get Hard. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all later. See you, everyone. Bye.